What's up? So you got it? Sorry. Sorry. So we're here at the haunted tours. We have no idea what's going to happen. If this is our last video, I want to tell you that this was all her idea, and if she somehow is alive and I'm not around, you need to go ahead and call the police. Ow, ow. Okay, she just hit me. See, there's the abuse right there. Any comments? Any comments?
The flash thingy on my phone hurts your eyes.
Everybody finds that this tour very interesting just because of what it talks about. But first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Bonnie. Bonnie Juarez. I am the treasurer with Paso, Norte Paranormal Society. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, which means that we like to give away most of the money that we make. The rest of it goes to bills. So like the rest of us, we work from paycheck to paycheck, but we love what we do. I want to introduce a couple of people to you this evening. As I said, my name is Bonnie. I will be a tour guide this evening as well. We're all volunteers, so we all change hats. Floor, mopper, sweeper, we do a little bit of everything. The young lady behind me, this is Miss Colette Mays. She's the secretary for the society. She's also a docent at the McGoffin Home. So we have our hands in a little bit of everything. She's also a board member at the Concordia Heritage Association. So that's another little pie that we have our hands in. Two other of our tour guides this evening, they're hiding back there. We have Mr. Dean Tarango and his wife, Ms. Heather Shade. Now, they are both tour guides, researchers. They both also manage two websites here in town, one called Lost Destinations, the other one called Lost El Paso. Heather and they are both actual board members on the Concordia Heritage Association board as well. And Ms. Shade is a published photographer. If you go to Barnes & Noble, and there is a book called Weird Texas, that is one of her works. So if you ever go to Barnes & Noble, go check it out. But a little bit of history about who we are and what we do and why we're here. As I said, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. How many of you watch Ghost Adventures? Awesome. How many of you watch Ghost Hunters? Awesomer. We are a member of the Ghost Adventures crew, and we are actually a TAPS family member. And what that means is that if you call TAPS or email them because you've got some funky things going on at your house, okay, not like that. Okay. If you have some stuff going on at your house or place of business and you email them that you need help, we're the ones who would get that email and get that case. TAPS is an international community. Those of you who don't watch the show, what they are is they're paranormal investigators. Yes, we are paranormal investigators, so we can do that. We do not charge for investigations. It's something we never charge for. So just to set that straight. A little bit of the equipment that we use tonight. We have K2s. How many of you guys have ever seen a K2? You see them on the shows. If you watch them on the shows, that's what they do. And what they do is they measure electromagnetic energy. We believe that if you have faulty wiring, appliances, speakers, all kinds of appliances give off EMF. Old wiring can give off EMF. But we do also believe that spirits use that energy, feed off of it, and emit it. So when we do investigations, we do baseline readings and try to communicate if we can. And we actually do sometimes get responses, and we do believe that that is something that we can pick up on the K2. Now, if you've also seen the show, how many of you have watched The Conjuring? Okay, you watched Annabelle. Mm-hmm. Okay, now Annabelle does actually exist. Okay, now She's actually a K2. We call her a trigger object because if you're speaking with a spirit, they're not going to be able to relate to a hard piece of plastic that has a little green light on it, but they might relate to this much better. And she has sensors in her hands and in her head, and if energy goes next to it, it will go off. And we've actually had, this is a very remarkable piece of equipment. It's very, we've gotten some really good evidence with it. And the picture that Colette's showing you, that's the real Annabelle. The real Annabelle does not look like that creepy, chucky looking kind of doll from the movie. She is a Raggedy Ann doll. She's about this tall though. She's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall. And she's at the Warren Museum in Rhode Island. So we will use this, a little bit of this equipment when we're in here. Yes, we are going to do an EVP session in here. And we'll also do one out in the alley. And that's where I'm going to come back to the history part about what we do. Now, as a nonprofit, we believe in the preservation and restoration of historical landmarks, historic buildings. That's why when we do our tours at Concordia, we donate the proceeds back to Concordia because that's what we're all about. Now, a little bit of history about this building. People look up and like, oh wow, there's a fire. Well, this building was actually built in 1883. It was known as the Fashion Saloon. And the Fashion Saloon was the first saloon in El Paso to have electric lights. And had a second floor, and it did have an upstairs brothel. It is one of the last, we've been told by a historian here in town that it is the last standing saloon building in town. And we do know it is the last that had a brothel upstairs. So 1889, it became the Wigwam Saloon. Wigwam Saloon was one of the top 5 elite saloons in town. John Wesley Hardin was actually part owner of the saloon for about a month when he was here in El Paso, the little bit of time that he lived here. The gentleman who killed him, John Henry Selman, was a bouncer here. So we do know that they crossed paths here probably pretty often. Now, actually, we have artwork here by Miss Lizzie Ochoa and other artists, local artists. This is a painting she did of John Wesley Hardin, and this is a painting she did of John Henry Selman. Now, 6 months or so after Hardin was killed, Selman actually was shot and killed in the alley outside. He got into an argument here with a gentleman by the name of George Scarborough. He took the fight outside. Selman actually didn't have his gun. Well, later on it was stolen, and he was shot, killed, well, died 4 hours later at Sisters Hospital, which later became Hotel Dew. 1889, as I said, it became the Wigwam Saloon. 1909, it became the Wigwam Theater. And about 1940, it became the State Theater. 1981, 82, the State Theater shut down, and they put it back into retail space. This was a furniture store, retail, liquor store. I think they actually had like an adult theater here for a while. So it's been a little bit of everything. But when we rented it, it was being used for storage. It was piled high with cardboard boxes. We've been here 2 years. And people ask, well, why does it look like that? There was a fire. In 2011, the building again was being used for storage. There was a fire out in the alley, and it got so hot, the boxes ignited, and that's why you see what you see. We're lucky that the building is standing, but that goes back to who we are. We feel that as long as we're here, hopefully they don't tear the building down. And as I said, it is one of the last, if not the last, standing old original saloon buildings. So, a little bit about us. That's who we are and what we do. Now, for tonight's tour, you guys are on a good one. This is a really good tour. It's very interesting. We have a large group, and that's why you've got numbers. So, group number 1, you're going to go with Heather and Dean. And they're going to take you outside, and you're going to start out there, and they're going to start the tour right away. Group number 2, what you're going to do is stay in here with us. And we're gonna do a little bit of an EVP session, go like that, do a little bit of investigating while we're here, and then we're gonna start on the tour. You're not gonna miss anything, because when group number 1 comes back in first, then you're gonna get your turn to investigate and do an EVP session.
Okay, first of all, well, we're going to set up Annabelle. But, real quick, I don't have a lot of them, but I do have some K2s that we could use in here while we do the investigation. Who would like to hold one? I saw 2 hands.
¿Quieres hablar conmigo, Lily? ¿Quisieras hablar conmigo? Lily? Aquí andas?
Lily, do you like the guy who's holding the device that it's going off?
Come on.
Do you want to talk to me? I think it was John. John, do you want to talk to me? Anybody here today?
There's a coward who shot Harding here.
Oh, shit. Oh, man, this is Ask that again?
No. It took a while to get there. Is a coward who shot John Wesley Harding here.
We're not jokers, but
Well, that's what history says that he was.
yeah.
That's not my words. I didn't know the guy.
It was about money. I think it was all about money.
Oh, yeah, we think so too.
And he was paying for free.
Well, Selman was 1896.
John, do you want to play dice?
John was playing Faro, actually.
I thought he was playing.
Yeah, it's a game casino. Operating.
Spiking up a wall.
It's actually
Got my Johns wrong.
You feel anything?
No.
Lily, are we bothering you? Would you rather we leave you alone?
Nothing so far? Well, other than that, I saw it for a second turn
Lily,
like
would
back
you like
and
for us
forth.
to stay and visit?
Just for a second. It seemed like it was just passing through. What do you think?
Lily, am I cute?
It's me just moving.
She was a redhead, right?
Am I a redhead?
No, she was.
We
Whoa.
don't know, actually.
Don't
We
know? No idea.
She could have been. But I want to go ahead and give you a little bit of historical information about the first person. I know everybody's like, who the hell's over there?
She's
About
creeping
the
us
first
out.
person we're going to talk about on our tour. And she was actually a woman, since this is a brothel tour. Her name was Sarah Bowman, or otherwise known as the Great Western. 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, dark-eyed with enormous
Ass.
intellect. Yes, she was very well endowed. And an hourglass figure. She has been described as having long black, red, or even blonde hair. Unfortunately, we don't have any pictures of her. First known prostitute to ply her wares in El Paso. She was born Sarah Knight in 1812 or 1813 or 1817. We're not exactly sure. She used many other last names throughout her lifetime. She was married to a soldier and traveled with Zachary Taylor's army during the Mexican-American War. She washed clothes, cooked for soldiers, and acted as a nurse even during battle. Following the soldiers, Sarah provided the men with food, drink, and women. She also continued to act as nurse for those wounded in war, even lifting and carrying them off the field. I mean, she was a big woman. She's known as the Great Western. She was
Okay.
6 feet tall, and I wouldn't have picked a fight with her, and I'm not exactly small. She carried a pistol and was an ace shot with a rifle. After the war, Sarah was traveling with a detachment of soldiers and ended up in El Paso. The first
That'd be
female to run a
coincidence.
business in El Paso, she opened a hotel at the site of Ponce de Leon's Rancho. She catered to gold diggers on their way to California, which was in 1849, the 49er gold rush. And she continued to use her medical skills to treat the sick and injured. She was the first recorded madam of El Paso. Her hotel later became the famous Central Hotel. And I'll tell you a little bit about where that was in just a second. Unable to have children of her own, she adopted several orphan children. She left El Paso in the early 1850s and married Albert J. Bowman, ending up in Fort Yuma, where she operated a boarding house and brothel. She died there in 1866 from a spider bite, and she received a full military funeral. And she actually had a full military pension because of her work with Secretary Taylor's army. So, and she actually was buried with, as I said, full military honors. Now, when she died in Yuma, later on she was reinterred in San Francisco. And I do have a picture of her headstone. This is Sarah Bowman.
Right.
Now, where the Central Hotel was located, she didn't really have a brothel. She did not have a house of ill repute. That was not the only business that was going on in that location. It was a hotel, but she was basically called a provider, if you would. If the gentleman wanted a cigar, she'd get him a cigar. If they wanted a certain brand of whiskey, she'd get them a certain brand of whiskey. If they wanted a brunette, she'd get them a brunette. That was what she did. Now, where the Central Hotel was is right there where the White House building is and where the Plaza Theater is. And when they talk about Ponce's Rancho, that's actually what El Paso was at the time. It was known as Ponce's Rancho. Even before, after the Mexican-American War, later on it was known as Franklin. But the buildings where the hotel was built were actually built with Ponce's stables and buildings from his rancho. I have a picture of that as well. Oh, we're blaster music. $5. Okay? I guarantee you it's gonna happen. Okay?
$5, I yell back.
Oh, we always do. Oh no, we always do. Are you kidding? I give as good as I get. I get as good as I get.
I know, right? You betting all of us $5? No, I'm profit,
No, I'm getting it.
I'm gonna shut my mouth down. I stop here because I want to talk about a building that's known as the Mansion. How many of you have ever been to the Rock House? You guys know where the Rock House is? Yeah? Straight down that way. It's an art gallery. They have music, live music, most weekends. Right next to it is a 2-story building, red brick building. See if I can get a picture of it. But it's known as the Mansion. That's what it's always been called.
That was a little weird.
Because it actually was a brothel up until, this is a picture of it, up until about 1944. It was still prostitution. Of course, prostitution still goes on now. But
still was.
oh no, trust me, it's down here too. You'll see it.
Are you talking about that your leg hurt like in how it normally is?
No,
or is it
Now,
sharp?
in the mansion, what they did is that the gentleman would come in, and you basically paid, depending on what type of girl.
Feeling any better though?
50 cents
Yeah.
for 10 minutes.
Oh.
It was get it done and get out. This is the business. That's pretty much how it was.
10 cents.
And what
Wow.
they had was
Hey, that was cheap.
No, 50 cents.
Decorations that went on the doorknobs, and it had the young lady's name. And what you would do is you would get a ticket, and you could go and you could look at the names and see which one was your favorite. And you would go in and get your 10 minutes and use your ticket. Each ticket was worth 10 minutes. So if you bought 5 tickets, you get almost an hour. You didn't have to go with the same lady if you didn't want to, but that's how it worked. You bought what you wanted and you went and you used it and you were done for the evening. Okay? And if we don't go down there because it's a long walk to go down there and come back, but it's about 4 or 5 blocks that way. kids coming out.
Well, at least we know another location.
Apparently, when we just passed the street about a block away, felt a sharp pain on your leg and had a headache. And not long after that, when we stopped here, I started having a headache, but then it actually disappeared.
Ah, this beautiful smell of diesel. Oh, look, we're going in a dark alley.
Hope we're not gonna all get stabbed. Well,
Anybody got a pee?
be careful. I thought they have the walls that makes the wall be back.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? Now you just did that on purpose. They just did that on purpose now.
I think mine's broken.
Now you're seriously doing that on purpose.
See, but when you move it or shake it, it's defaulted. Hold on.
I did, and I said, and I repeat what I said, sometime tonight while we're on the tour.
Oh, now it's sometime tonight.
No, I did not.
Because your buddy got stuck at the lights.
Yeah, everybody has memories. I know very well.
I'm too short, I can't see. Okay, some people are still.
Yeah.
They're still good? Okay. So we're in kind of the area that was known as the Tenderloin District. Okay? It was on East Overland, Oregon, 3rd and Utah, which is now Mesa. We'll talk a little bit more about that later when we're on over there. And it was also known as the Reservation. The girls were also known as Soiled Doves. There was lots of names. Okay, streetwalkers and the crib girls, they advertised from the front of their windows of their one-room apartments or cribs. I mean, it literally was called a crib because you walked in, it literally had a bed, and that was pretty much it. I mean, it was very small, and that's about all could fit in there was just the bed. So it was called cribs. And like Bonnie said, they charged 50 cents to $1 for their time. The saloon girls worked above the bars and the dance halls, like in our establishment. There was upstairs, there was a little like a mini brothel up there. Now the parlor girls worked in brothels that catered to the wealthy clientele, and they charged $3 to $5. And when we get over on near Mesa Street or on Mesa Street, we'll talk about those, because that was luxury, okay, for the girls, especially if you worked there. Now the parlor house girls were charged as much as 50% of their earnings, and were also charged for use of the brothel room. So yeah, they worked and they were very well protective. They had a good place to live and everything, but they were charged, they had to give money to the house for everything. Their laundry, food, their clothes, their room, everything. So they didn't make a whole lot of money. They made, some, because they were able to charge more, but they didn't make a whole lot. And of course, then they had their charge accounts with the madams. Now, the crib girls could often make more because they didn't have to give up their money to the madams. But then they had no protection. So it's like, okay, do you keep all your money and have no protection, or do you
Not
work?
that kind of protection, okay? They had other means, other ways of doing
Now,
it.
however, some of the crib girls were able to save enough money to become a madam in their own right and get their own establishment. So, and we'll talk about those later. Now, the way they advertised to the gentlemen of the city, and if you look at old newspaper advertisements, you'll see fully furnished rooms, okay? That meant that's where you would go. That's how they got away with getting it in the newspaper and advertising. They would just say fully furnished room, rent. Rent fully furnished. So,
And with fully furnishment, that meant it was furnished with the girl,
yeah.
including the girl.
Kind of like the masajes in Juarez. Well, I've heard.
Shit.
No, with the newspaper, that's what they do.
So with that, we're gonna head down and we'll start talking about some of the big five, the madams of the era.
Walking around. Nothing so far. Going to this, near this hotel, Linux?
No, we're going.
Linux. Amy Fashion.
We're going by the date gate.
We gotta hurry, we gotta cross the road.
These people can walk fast.
Don't worry, we could do it because we've been working out.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Se fue con Lili.
Oh, missing a few.
Now we're in the area that Colette was talking about. From San Antonio down Mesa, this was known as the Tenderloin. This was the reservation. This was the brothel district. And at the time, prostitution was perfectly legal. In fact, the licensing and the fees that the women were charged, they were charged $5 a week. That actually paid the police department and fire department salaries. So you can imagine a system that later on they had to arrest these women, but they were basically the ones who were paying their salaries. So it was a little hypocritical, if you could imagine. Now we're going to talk now. At the time, this was known as Utah Street, and Utah Street was known internationally as being the place to come if you wanted to have a good time. El Paso at the time, once the railroads came in 1881, we went from a dirt road, adobe hut town, maybe 200-300 people. Within 2 years, we had 5,000 to 6,000 people. On San Antonio and El Paso Street, you had 97 saloons. Okay? 97 saloons. And then all of Utah Street were brothels. Whole street. You had crib girls, you had the parlor houses. Now, what was known as the Big Five, the top five, were the top 5 madams in town who had their brothels here on Utah. You had Alice Abbott, Etta Clark, Tilly Howard, Gypsy Davenport, and May Palmer. Now, there were other madams who were lesser known, but those were the Big Five, and they were called the top 5. Now, 2 of them were right across the street from each other, and they hated each other. So you can imagine, right? Now, Etta Clark was a foul-mouthed, bad-tempered, intelligent, beautiful, and attractive. She was a petite, 5 feet tall, red-hair French Canadian. Her family name was Mercier, and she came from Atlanta, Georgia. She arrived in El Paso by train. She had a way with the wealthy businessmen. Okay, that was, she was a charmer, and it was the wealthy, well-to-do, well-known men who really liked to go to her place. Now, she liked pets, and she had 2 large parrots in her parlor. One spoke English. His name was Pete. The other spoke Spanish. His name was
Pedro.
Pedro. Exactamente. It was Pedro. Se llama Pedro. That was my ex-husband's name. Anyway. Now, she eventually died in 1908. Now, Etta's brothel was the site of a fatal shooting. W.B. Tripp locked his wife Hattie into a room over jealousy at her working at the brothel. And after hitting her with the pistol and shooting her in the thigh, he then shot himself in the head. He left an angry suicide note blaming Etta Clark for his marital troubles and his suicide. So it was all her fault. Hit her, but then killed himself. I guess that's better than him killing her. Now, ultimately, across the street was Alice Abbott. Now, she was known, unfortunately, or fortunately, as Fat Alice. Or Big Alice. She was 6 feet tall,
200 pounds. She arrived in El Paso by train in 1880. She was the rival and enemy of Etta Clark, who had parlor houses, as I said, across the street. The first El Paso police officer who died in the line of duty, Thomas Mode, was shot and killed during a disturbance at Abbott's Brothel in July of 1883. Now, ultimately, there was also another killing in Abbott's Brothel. During an argument with her husband, Abbott's maid Betty Williams grabbed a gun that Abbott kept for defense and pointed it at him. A struggle for the gun ensued, and Betty accidentally shot herself in the cheek and then the head, killing herself. George Williams then grabbed the gun and shot himself in the head, falling unconscious from the porch. Amazingly, he awoke and was taken to a doctor. He survived his wound and was acquitted on the grounds of self-defense. Now, there was a funny story about Miss Alice Abbott and Etta Clark. I want to show you a couple of pictures of them. Now, as I said, Miss Alice Abbott, she was known as Big Alice. Okay? Not a happy person. And these pictures came, she had a photo album, a scrapbook. And she had several of her friends and several of her girls. Pictures of them were in it.
How deep are your roots go?
Wait,
Is that
what I tell you?
She got shot in the face?
No, that was a different young lady who worked for her. Okay, wait. I'm waiting for it.
Here's your $5. There's your redemption.
Now, this is Miss Etta Clark. This was Miss Abbott's bitter rival.
There you go. There it is.
Happens every time. Oh, you gotta love downtown. You gotta love downtown. I'm gonna wait because then you were never gonna be able to hear me.
It's barely 10. I heard it.
Well, then get your ass home. Hey.
Put your seatbelt on!
Girl, don't fall. I'm not authorized to save you yet.
Oh, that was me. That was really
There it is, $5.
See what I tell you. It never fails. Really, I'm good. This is a picture of Miss Etta Clark. And as you can see, she was pretty much the polar opposite of Miss Abbott. And you see that how her picture has a big X across it? That was because this was in Miss Abbott's photo album. She obviously did not like Miss Clark. Now there was an incident that happened because of this young lady. Now she was a beautiful young woman. This was Busty Betsy Calvin. I don't know why she was called that. She was a beautiful young lady who actually worked for Alice Abbott. But Alice, apparently they did not get along. Apparently they did not get along. Betsy said was a little tipsy one time, got in an argument, got in a fight. She said, I'm leaving, packed up all her stuff, marched across the street, knocked on the door at Etta's house and said, I want to work for you. Etta's now got the most popular young lady, working girl, knocking on her door saying, I want to work for you. She's also her most bitter rival's most prized possession. She's like, honey, you come right on in. You come in and you sit down and you make yourself at home. Well, Alice finds out about this. So here she comes. Oh, hell to the no. That's not going to happen. So she walks across, marches across, all 200 pounds of her, bangs on the door, and as Etta opens the door, Alice doesn't say anything, just boom, punches her in the face between them. So there's this tussle going on, and he's like, no, I'm going to see her now. And he's drunk and he's trying to make a scene. So McKittrick tells him, look, let's go outside. You know, we got to, calm down. And as he's fumbling around to go outside, he inadvertently shoots his gun. And what the police officers had given the madams was a whistle, so that if they had trouble, they could blow the whistle, and then the police officer would come. So his gun goes off, and she blows her whistle. So who's in the area but John Selman? John Selman and another police officer come, and McKittrick tells Bass, "You've got to calm down. You're going to get yourself killed and get yourself in trouble." And he's so drunk, he goes, "Oh yeah, you want some too?" Boom. Fun. Sorry guys. I'm going to put it on vibrate.
You see any shadows?
No. They should pass again, right? It's like, hey, come on, hey, do it again, do it again. Now, the gentleman I want to talk about, he was a former Texas Ranger by the name of Bass Outlaw. Very well liked by all of his friends. From everything that we have read about him, he was a very good police officer. Well, officer of the law as a ranger. As a Texas Ranger, he was a police officer. Except when he drank. And when he drank, he became an absolute jerk. He actually lost his commission as a ranger because of his drinking. Now, he was so bad that he basically lost all of his friends, except one, by the name of McKittrick. And John Selman, who was city constable, was actually here doing his rounds, walking around. And McKittrick and Bass Outlaw had decided to come to Tilly's because, well, they wanted to have a good time. And Bass had a particular young lady who was his favorite. So he came in extremely drunk. McKittrick was with him, just basically kind of to watch around, make sure he was okay, because he had a way of getting himself in trouble. Came in, demanded to see his girl. And Tilly said, "You know what, she's busy, she's with another customer. I'm sure she'll be with you as soon as they're done." No, he demanded to see her. What's going on?
I do not know. I don't know.
You guys okay? Well, I know maybe they're worried about their bike.